Hello and welcome to this week's Cats Whiskers podcast. My name is Jono Bullard. Got a packed show for you this week. We'll very shortly be talking to David Sims about his epic 83-mile walk for the Weston Park Cancer Charity last week. And we'll also be looking at the title race and Steelers Championship win. I'm delighted to say I've got two people with me this week. First of all, Andy Haywood.
Evening.
Good evening. And I'm also delighted to welcome someone who we've wanted to get on the podcast for a while and has wanted to come on, and we've finally got him on. I'm delighted to say we have Freddie Black on with us.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome, Freddie. Thanks for coming on and taking the time to talk to us. Later on, we'll also be looking at the GB squad announcement and also answering some of your Ask CWTV questions before finishing off by looking up the playoff quarterfinals, which are coming up this weekend. But first, last night I got the chance to talk to David Sims, the Sheffield press officer, who, of course, did an epic 83-mile charity walk last week, which ended with them raising in the region of £23,000. A phenomenal achievement, but, of course, not without its emotion, as sadly Amy Usher, the inspiration behind the walk, passed away on Thursday of last week. It's a two-part interview, so the first part is talking about the walk and about Amy, and here's what he had to say. Joining us on the podcast is a man who needs very little introduction, but after a quite unique, incredible and very emotional few days, we've got Mr. David Sims. How are you, Dave?
I'm okay. I'm just being massaged as we speak, Jono, at the moment. I've got two young, attractive masseuses, one on each foot, and I'm okay right now.
Good. Obviously, the reason why you need that massage is from last week. You walked 83 miles in 4 days, all in aid of the Weston Park Cancer Charity, which so far the total's looking quite outstanding. Was it £23,151?
Yes, 23,000. It was actually, 88.9 miles at the end because somebody closed a slip road and we had to walk around a housing estate just outside Chesterfield. And before that, we were walking up a towpath just outside Derby and they were rebuilding it, so we had to divert. So it ended up being 88.9 miles, but worth every, for all the aches and pains, but certainly worth it for an incredible total. We never thought we'd get anywhere near 23. I think we'd all hoped if we hit double figures and got up to 10 grand, we'd be doing well. But to get to 23 was just extraordinary.
How surprised were you with the support you got, not only from Sheffield fans, as would be expected, but the support you got from around the UK hockey community? It was quite phenomenal, really.
It was. It's a good job I'm so popular, and obviously I could unite the fans in such a way to do that. I think generally, Johnny, you and I were just talking before you press play and record, then the vast majority of people in the British game are good people, are honest, hard-working folk who go to work 9 to 5 or longer and then enjoy their hockey at the weekend, and they're good folk, whatever colour jerseys they wear. There's a few idiots in the game, but the vast majority of people that you know and I know are all good folk, especially once you get to meet them. So we shouldn't be overly surprised, but we had the situation where some bloke in Belfast, raises nearly 750 quid for us on a Colin Shields shirt. What your own club, Neil and his family donated a substantial amount of money. I even think, I think Gary's check from the actual Panthers, we had 100 quid off them on day one, Simon, everybody. And then the players, when I came to one of the Steelers Panthers games, Robert Farmer comes up to me and he says, Simsy, there's an envelope, and there was a substantial amount of money in it, Jana, that had come from every player in the Panthers dressing room, and there was a card for Amy as well, and it was the same. I went to Cardiff, a place you think I'm unpopular in nothing, and you should walk around Cardiff with me, and people coming up to me handing me money, and it was weird. It was humbling at times, and but it was worth it. And obviously the folk in Sheffield all knew Amy. Every one of the thousands in there should become a very focal point of our hockey club since last year's playoff success. And then for her to be as poorly as she was, it was just highlighted at that time. So everybody around the country, a big thank you to them all, because to get to 23,000 quid, that's a daft amount of money in it.
It's incredible, absolutely incredible. Of course, you mentioned Amy there. You was doing this on behalf of Amy Usher. She was the inspiration. You met her, I believe, in Weston Park hospital. Just tell us a little bit about her and what she was like and what her character was.
Well, we came about it like all hockey clubs. You get approached by hospitals and, I don't know, different groups for free tickets, and we do a lot of that. And Weston Park had asked us for some tickets, and we've given some tickets for some patients and some staff. And then the week after, they came back to us and said, "Hey, one of the girls who came really enjoyed it. She'd like to come back again. Is there anything special you can do?" Yeah, she's a very poorly girl, and only a matter of months left. And this was like January last year. So her and her sister Beth came down, and we, introduced her to the boys, photographed in the dressing room, all the normal things, and gave her a night to remember. And she went home very happy. Now, again, every sporting club will tell you that during the duration of their time, and in my 24 years in Sheffield, there's been a lot of sick kids that have come through the doors and we've given a good night to, and then maybe kids from the Burns unit, and then maybe the foster kids, and you give them a good night, but we're all so busy that when they walk out of the double doors, they do get forgotten, and then the next, poorly child walks in or whatever. But for some reason, she just stuck around, and we invited her back the next week. She came back, and then it was a term just after the coaching change. We started to win games. We were having her on that she was a lucky mascot. And then all of a sudden, one night, a picture was tweeted, and all the players had decided to take the two girls out for a meal, for a curry. And hockey players, you normally have to kick them into doing something. They just done it off their own bat. And then a week later, there was another photograph tweeted, and it was all the wives and girlfriends had taken the two girls out. And then all of a sudden, she was just there all the time and just an integral part of the club. And then at the playoffs, we took her, we hoteled her, one of those money can't buy experiences, and she ended up leaving her car in Nottingham and coming back on the team bus and partying at Stephen Gertson's house till 5 a.m, and everybody just got so attached to the whole family. And it's not just Amy, she's got a cracking sister Beth, she's got a fabulous set of parents who are the most lovely, down-to-earth people you could ever wish to meet. And it just stayed. It just stayed all the way through the summer. And I don't know if you know, but on the ice, just as the Steelers players step onto the ice, her name is written into the ice and has been in the ice all season. And she's just basically been a mascot for us up until, and she will be going forward. I mean, we'll make sure that going forward next season and for every season, there'll be some recognition of her in the building, on the ice, I'm sure, going forward.
Of course, on the second day of your walk, the horrible news came through that Amy had sadly passed away. You got that news around lunchtime, and there was an incredibly emotional video that you put out later on that day of you, Elliot, and Neil, who you was walking with. How difficult was it? I mean, not only were you in, as you kept describing, you was in quite a lot of discomfort and pain from the walk, but then to get that news, it must have been an absolute hammer blow for you.
Awkward to answer that one, because everybody always takes my words and mixes them up and mixes them around how they come out. It wasn't horrible and awkward, and that for me. I must admit, we got the call at about 9:15 from Beth, who was leaving work saying that she'd just been called up to the hospital. So obviously things weren't good. And then when we got the call that Amy had passed, I have to say to you, in my mind, it wasn't one of mass hysteria and emotional wreckage. It was one of relief. It was one that, I wouldn't say, saying you were quite pleased is completely the wrong thing, but the girl, over the last 14 months, 15 months that we'd known her, had lived a life. She'd experienced life. She'd done great things. I last saw her the Saturday before, 4 or 5 days before, and she was a poorly kid. She was as white as a sheet. She wasn't well. She was she was on drugs, and it wasn't the same girl. It wasn't the same girl. So I must admit, the first thing that I thought was relief, and that she was now at peace. And then I got back to cursing her, as we were walking up the big hills. It's awkward because it wasn't one of, we all broke down. Yes, we were all very sad. Of course we were. We then told stories about it all the way for the rest of the day. We were upset. But, I think I said on that video that you referred to, is it a good day or is it a bad day? And, I actually think it was probably a good day, that she peacefully went, and she went without pain, and that's what you could hope for, isn't it? Yeah,
I can totally understand that, totally. Obviously, it drove you on for the rest of the walk, and it must have felt such a wonderful achievement when you was walking towards Sheffield Arena on Saturday.
It was humbling, Jared, to be honest with you, and you know what, I guess not when I say it's very, I find it very awkward when people say nice things about me. I was probably having 20 years of people saying bad things, but it was, I mean, people came out. I mean, we were on the second day, we had a couple of Panthers fans come out just to peer out of the bus stop, and then later on in the day, a bloke appears with his daughter, and he says, my daughter's been following me on a track. I've just come out from work, and she's made me come to the bottom of the road to say hello, and there's a tenner. And it's humbling when people come and do that. And yes, when you walked into the arena and, there's a big group of people. And it was funny because, a lot of the fans that came out to see us, and a lot of the fans who were waiting for us when we got to the arena, they were actually, they were faces that I've known for 20 years. And you don't know their life stories and you don't know their histories, but then they say to you, yeah, I'm a Weston Park survivor, yeah, I had cancer and all that. And you think, crikey, there's a lot of people out there that have suffered and have benefited from this hospital that we walk for. So yeah, humbling was probably the biggest word, or the word that probably identifies most of how I felt.
One final question before we move on to talking about the championship is, did you manage to get a KFC?
No. and you know what? The route that we never passed one KFC on the whole route, which was my fault because I kind of oversaw a lot of the route. But secondly, when we got to Sheffield, the last thing in the world I could eat was that. I think actually the walks probably put me off it. So no KFCs. We had a lot of McDonald's to see though, and I must put a shout out to Domino Pizzas because our driver Dean, Dean the photographer, he went to get some lunch one day and he was in the support car and he went off and he came back with a ton of food. And he'd gone into Domino's and explained what the walk was for, and the guy wouldn't take any money. He gave us 80 quid worth of food for free. And so everybody you came to, there's a little old lady, the car was parked outside, and this little old lady hobbles up to Dean in the car and says, what are you parked outside my house for? And Dean explains. She goes back inside her house, she comes back with £2. Here you are, and she gives us the £2. I mean, and there was dozens and dozens of stories like that. We stopped at the Travelling at Ashby. We walked past Ashby. Is it Tuckhill, I think, or Tuckhill? Yeah. Just 5 mile north of Ashby on day one. That's where we walked to. But the people that the Travelling at Ashby, it couldn't have been more helpful, and they threw a few quid, and all the girls were on reception, and everybody was very generous and very kind.
So the thoughts of Dave Sims there on the walk that he did last week. We'll be talking to Dave again a little later about the title race. Andy, I'll come to you first. I mean, just an incredible achievement to do what they did and seemingly unite the whole of the UK hockey community for a short while. Yeah,
absolutely. It's the one thing that, to me, separates this sport from every other one that I know about is the togetherness and the community when things do go wrong. And obviously the tragic story of Amy Usher has really hit home with an awful lot of people. With her having the cancer so young, it's really affected me in the sense that she's 3 years younger than I am, and it really hits home just how horrific the condition is and stuff. So what Dave and Elliot and Neil have done is absolutely superb. The circumstances behind it are horrible and unfortunate, but it just goes to show what a great community spirit that this sport in this country really has.
Freddie, you mentioned yourself and your family who saying that you gave a substantial donation to his walk. What were your thoughts when he was sort of on it and then completed it on Saturday?
I just wanted to back up what Andy actually just said before about people often criticise the league for a lot of stuff, but when it comes to giving charity, I think everyone really does an exceptional job. To be honest, I remember. Ryan Finnerty in Brayhead talking about it. I mean, I don't know what the figure is, but if the Amy Usher thing in itself is incredible. Even the work that all the clubs do themselves. I mean, if you were probably to add up how much money they've raised this year, you're probably talking about 6 figures really.
It's just an incredible amount of money. I believe it's about £24,000 that they've managed to raise so far, and that will go to helping other people of the same age of Amy who are in a similar position, very ill with cancer. So it's a more than worthwhile cause. I mean, any charity is, but it's just a fantastic cause for the money to go to, Andy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know yourself, Jono, you've been a part of some fantastic charity events in the past. The real togetherness of everyone that gets behind these things, it always staggers me just how much money these people raise. Every team gets behind it and really helps give the help and support to these charities, and it's great to see.
Of course, sadly, Amy did pass away on Thursday last week, and from everyone at the podcast, we would like to send our condolences to her friends and family. Okay, moving on to the weekend, and of course a busy weekend that saw the Elite League title be lifted by the Sheffield Steelers on Saturday night. Prior to that, on Friday evening, the Panthers took on the Steelers in a game that finished 4-3 to the Steelers with an overtime victory. Panthers taking the lead through Sam Oakford and doubling the lead through Greg Jacina before Steelers came back through Mike Forney and a short-handed goal from Ben O'Connor. Panthers retook the lead through Brandon Benedict in the third period before Mato Awa scored with just 2 minutes 28 seconds to go, and that man Wa again scoring with just 13 seconds of overtime remaining. So, Freddie, the Steelers pipping Brea Clan to the post at the very end, and of course the big 2 points that they got in Nottingham on Friday evening. You saw, I believe, the last 10 minutes of the game, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
Last 8 minutes of signing the overtime, yeah.
Yeah. So talking about that overtime period, really, and of course, I suppose a controversial moment is when Evan Mosey got his penalty with just 29 seconds remaining. Having watched it again, a clear tripping penalty, but controversial in the way that the referee seemed to be letting other offences go earlier in that overtime period. Is that how you saw it?
Yeah, they were letting a lot of penalties go. I mean, the Mosey penalty, the thing was it was right in front of him, and it was, I mean, you've seen it. It was pretty blatant, to be honest. It was almost like a delay of game penalty. Almost, he sort of had to give it. I think, in my opinion. I mean, and to be fair, there was only really 30 seconds left. We probably should have been able to see it out, but it was a great result for them in the end. It was, yeah.
Andy, you like me was at the game on Friday night. What was your thoughts? Because for me, there was a couple of penalties that probably could have been called earlier than that, and I'm thinking more the holding the stick on Chris Higgins and a trip on Mosey a little bit earlier. What were your thoughts on the night itself?
Yeah, I mean, to reiterate, what yourself and Freddie have said, the penalty on Evan Mosey is stonewall. It is a trip. His stick goes between the legs, and the guy gets hauled down. It is a penalty. The thing that is annoying is obviously the missed calls or the non-calls throughout the rest of overtime. And like you say, there was one about 30-40 seconds before Mosey gets called where I think Jacina has the puck and goes to take the shot. And I can't remember who it was, but a Steelers defenseman slides down to block the shot. But Jacina wisely holds onto the puck instead of releasing it, skates forward and is tripped up by the sliding player. Now, whilst I appreciate that, it's overtime, it's a crucial game, there's a lot riding on it, and it's an unfortunate play because the guy's not, put his stick out in between somebody's legs or anything like that. He has still tripped up a player. And it was right in front of the refs, and it wasn't called. And at the time, I thought, fair enough. It's overtime. If that's the way it's going to be, that's the way it's going to be. They're obviously put their whistles away. At the end of the day, there was potentially a league title resting on it. So the refs themselves don't want to be the centre of attention. But, like I say, a few seconds later, they call the trip on Mosey. I've got no problem with the call itself. Like I said, it was stonewall, but if that was Stonewall, then the one a few seconds before certainly was as well.
Looking back earlier in the game, Andy, and of course Panthers taking that 2-0 lead and looked quite comfortable, but then two errors really led to the Steelers coming back in it. Did you think that once they got it back to 2-2, there was never going to be any other result? Because I must admit, I thought that once it became 2-2, the Steelers were by far the better side for the rest of the night.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They were the better team. There was part of the thought if we could have held on to penalty shots, it's as much a lottery as anything else. So you just don't know. We've not been great on penalty shots all year, but you sort of think you get 3 decent penalty shots, or you get a couple of lucky penalty shots, and Modi makes a couple of saves, then you end up with the 2 points. But I thought certainly the team that was the best overall on the night was Sheffield, and they've got in my eyes the player of the year in Mathieu Roy, who just seems to be so consistently clutch, just scoring big goals. And I doubt over the course of the year he scored 2 bigger than the ones he scored on Friday night against us.
Freddie, obviously the 2 points meant that still Clan and Cardiff could win the title, but the ball was very much in Sheffield's court. After the game finished on Friday night, did you think that Braehead still had a chance?
Very slim, to be honest. Very slim. I really couldn't see Cardiff getting anything from that game on Saturday. And even if they did, I didn't really. By that time, really, I thought going into that last game on Sunday, if Cardiff had the chance to win it, they were probably going to win it as well. So, Braehead basically needed 4 results really to go in their favour. They needed 3. They needed 4. It is 4. They needed Cardiff to beat Sheffield and beat Nottingham. Lose to Sheffield. Beat Sheffield, lose to Nottingham, and they needed to win their 2 games. So after that result on Friday, I probably thought it was out of their hands. Really. It was probably a step too far.
A tough question, but do you think that Braehead blew it in the end? Because they were clear favourites probably a month up to a month ago.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it said quite a bit that they choked us. I got sent a couple of those videos. I mean, I was looking back over their fixtures actually, and since the month of February, they've really only lost 1 game where you thought, that is a game they really should have won, and that was the game last week against Edinburgh, or a couple of weeks ago. They've only lost 4 games since the start of February. 1 was to Cardiff at home, and 2 of them were, one of them was away to Sheffield, and 1 of them was away to Nottingham. I'm not sure if they blew it. I mean, they really should have beaten Edinburgh, to be fair. Sheffield ran on an unbelievable run, really, to be honest. So I think they deserve it at the end of the day.
I mean, I suppose, Andy, when you look at Sheffield's last 10 games, which I think only 2 of their last 10, I believe, was against Gardner Conference teams. So when you look at the toughness of the running that they had, I suppose they do deserve the title.
Absolutely. Hey, if a team has more points than anybody else over the same course of games, they deserve it. In my eyes, they might not have had the best overall team, perhaps, or anything like that. But by the same token, they just grinded out the results that they needed to, and that is what made them a great team. I personally agree with Freddie. I don't think so much that Braehead blew it. If you look at their run of four losses since February, it's a great return. But obviously, the thing that will always stick out is that loss to Edinburgh, a game that they should have won. And I would imagine even the most optimistic of Caps fans would have probably said that Braehead would win, given that their circumstances. So I just think that Sheffield were the best team in the league this year because they've won the league. But how close it was with Braehead and Cardiff is great for the league as well.
Moving on to Sunday night, and Panthers took on the Cardiff Devils at the Big Blue Tent in what essentially was a dead rubber game. Panthers on the reverse of a 7-2 scoreline. I think Cardiff taking out their frustration from Saturday night on the Panthers. Cardiff goals coming from Matthew Myers, Carl Hudson, Joey Haddad, Walton, Clarkson, Hotham and Morissette. Panthers scoring through Graham Doucette and Chris Lawrence. Freddie, you said you turned this game off after it got to 6-1. I actually haven't seen it. I haven't had the stomach to watch any highlights of it up until this point. Was it really as bad as it was looking, or we was hearing on Twitter?
It wasn't terrible, but I mean, Cardiff were just clinical, to be honest. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't think Modig had his best game, to be honest. And I think Dan Green came in after the 5th goal. I think. Yeah, that's right. Cardiff came out really well, and it seemed that they were taking out maybe a bit of frustration from the night before. And as you said, it was a dead rubber really for Panthers. So I mean, it was still disappointing, but from a Panthers perspective. But I guess that's to be expected in that game. I mean, before the game, I was pretty sure Cardiff were going to win.
Andy, any surprises from that result at all?
Possibly the scoreline, but I firmly sit in Freddie's camp that it would have been a pretty decent effort and a big result if we'd have got something out of that game, considering the fact that it was a dead rubber for us. The fact that, to be fair, Cardiff technically still had something to play for, because if they were still going for that CHL spot, so they still needed to get the win. Our season was decided. We were done. So it was a dead rubber for us and not for them. So I wasn't surprised that Cardiff won. Slightly surprised with the amount of goals they scored. I'm not going to lie. But at the end of the day, Cardiff is a difficult place to go to and win. So the result itself is not one that surprises me, but perhaps the manner in which the win came is the surprise.
Okay, well, the upshot of all that is that the Sheffield Steelers are the champions of the Elite League for the 2014-15 season with 74 points. So the second part of the interview I did with David Sims last night, and in this he talks about Sheffield winning the title. I remember a podcast that you did with Seth. I think we'd just beaten you 4-1 at the arena, and you both sounded quite depressed, quite down, pretty much like we did the other week. And did you honestly think, deep down at that time, that Sheffield could go on and win the league from that point?
I think the time you must be referring to was Christmas. We had a horrible Christmas period where we lost to you guys a couple of times. We then went to Belfast New Year and lost 2 back-to-back. And I think we picked 1 point up out of 8. We weren't playing well, and I think there was a point there where you felt we could well have lost it here, because we had played a lot of out-of-conference games pre-Christmas. So we knew that the back half of the schedule was tougher than the front half. And the games that we got left was against the likes of, Belfast, Cardiff, Coventry, Nottingham. So I think we all realised that we'd have to go on one hell of a run, and there'd have to be a bit of a turnaround for us to do that. Then, of course, we had the Frank Doyle incident when Frank goes down and you got 24 hours to sign a goalie before deadline date, and you get a kid and you really don't know if he's going to be any good or not. You've been told he's okay, but is he the guy you would have taken in June or July for a season? Probably not. But then, I think Eunice came in, and Eunice's form and naivety and youthfulness kind of kicked us on a little bit, and he's a major reason I think we did go and kick on. We then eventually got the Petruska signing in, which gave us a little bit more balance because we could take Fretter off the top line, and Petruska did really well on that line, and it gave Mosienko and Dad a little bit more to work with. And that went right up to the Challenge Cup final when Thomas got injured and then had to move back up onto the big line again. But no, around Christmas and New Year, I don't think too many people were probably putting money on us at that point. Because Braid should have gone on and won it at that time. They should have kicked on, and they should have won it. They had the opportunity. The other clubs, the clubs in our conference gave Braid every opportunity to win it because we were beating each other up. Sheffield, you had a good spell against us early doors. We had a good spell against you later on. Same with Belfast, Cardiff. We were all beating each other, and really, Braid should kick themselves a little bit for not jumping into it and taking it. They really should have had.
It's been a surprising season though, because it's been so close right up until the very end. I mean, the past 3 seasons have probably not been as close, but to have 3 teams in with a chance in the last weekend and quite low points totals compared to other seasons as well, has it surprised you how close it's been?
No, not really, because that's really how it should be in a league like ours. And you actually say 3 teams, but you go back 3 weeks before that, there was 5 teams that could have quite easily. Belfast, yourselves dropped off late, and Belfast dropped off late as well. And Belfast, Nottingham, Sheffield, and Cardiff. Remember, Cardiff have got a few. Don't just think Cardiff are a small town team. You know what? They pay no rent. They've got good ownership. It's a stable club. It's a great city to play for, and they've got it just right in their building. And their building has a huge advantage. Make no mistake, the biggest advantage in the whole league is the Cardiff at home advantage, and that's why Coventry have suffered, because they haven't had a very good season, but because everybody else has played well, they've really taken the brunt of it. So you then expect Braehead to kick on, so then that gives you those 5 teams. The team that really should do a lot better, I think, is Fife. I mean, Fife spend good money, but Fife are still, I think, 5 or 10 years behind everybody else in their preparation training and their planning. I think if they ever got that right, Fife could be. Honestly, I think Fife could be the team that could challenge you and do some serious damage, especially in the conference system. So I wasn't surprised it was that close. It's great when it's obviously great when you win it, but it's great that going into that final weekend, lots of fans thought they could be league champions come Sunday night.
A quick look ahead then to the playoffs. So you are obviously playing Fife, Hull against Clan, Devils Belfast, which should be a huge series, and then Panthers Blaze. So who do you think is going to take it?
I think the normal suspects. I mean, if you hadn't got club affinity, and you always hate backing your own club, but you know what? The first place team should beat the 8th place team, so Sheffield should beat Fife. The interesting one might just be Braehead Hull, because Braehead have had a few problems against Hull. And if Hull can get a couple of bodies back into the lineup, that could be interesting, but you would still take Braehead. You'd be going on the outside bet. I'll take Cardiff to beat Belfast, because again, I think the advantage of that game in Cardiff, which is the home game, the first game on that series. Do you know off the top of your head?
I think it's Belfast on Saturday.
Belfast on Saturday. The only problem with that for Cardiff is Cardiff has to travel twice. I know they'll go the day before, but you've still got to travel twice. You've got to travel to Belfast, and then you've got to travel from Belfast to Cardiff, where Belfast have just got to travel once. The key there will be Belfast have got to take a couple of goal lead into that game, and I just don't think Coventry can score. I think, is it 4 in the last 5? They scored. I just don't think they can score. Their goalie Stuart is exceptional, and he's going to have, and he's had some brilliant nights, but he's going to have his 2 best nights. And if he has them, Coventry have got a chance. But I prefer your chances. I mean, if Kowalski was in goal now, maybe Modi gives them a little bit of a chance, but I can't see Nottingham not being in the final 4. I think it'll be a good fight, and you know what, if those 4 teams make it through, Braehead, Cardiff, Sheffield, Nottingham, what a final 4 weekend that is. Because with all due respect, last year I don't think anybody expected Fife or Braehead to win it. Everybody, 4 teams went to Nottingham, and really 2 teams had aspirations to win it. But if those 4 teams travel to Nottingham, then all 4 will expect to win it, and this could be the best final 4 ever. Hey, but there's always going to be a surprise. One of those series will throw up a surprise.
Okay, before I let you go, just on the back.
We're not going to talk about our unstructured coaching system now.
No.
Or about Nottingham's lack of respect for the other conference, and then they go and lose the league by not playing well against the other conference. We're not going to discuss any of that now.
No idea what you're talking about. Just before we go back to the fundraising, so people can still donate. That's right, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. I think the easiest way is the Just Giving site, Simsy and Friends. I think the easiest way to find that is if you go to my Facebook page. There's a Simsy and Friends Facebook page, or just my Facebook page, and then there's scroll down. There'll be a link on there, and it's easy. But don't forget the gift aid, because the gift aid's another £4,000 at the moment. So it says 23,200 on the screen at the moment, but I think you had the 4 and a bit thousand that David Cameron's given us, and it's all of a sudden it's 27,500, which is phenomenal.
David, thanks as ever for your time. Really, really appreciate it. Congratulations on your phenomenal achievement. You all deserve a huge amount of respect. And many, many congratulations on winning the title.
Thanks, and thanks for all the support. Cheers, fella.
The thoughts of David Sims there, good value and honest as always. And thanks very much to him for taking the time to speak to us. So, Sheffield are the champions, Braehead finishing second, Cardiff third, Nottingham fourth, but Nottingham winning the EIHL Conference Championship. Andy, a cause for celebration?
Oh, absolutely, definitely. It's the biggest trophy in the league.
Yeah, well, that's literally rather than figuratively.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. It's great that we were the better team out of that conference. Perhaps if it means that we get what is deemed an easier tie into the playoffs, but other than that, there's not a lot in it really. Let's be honest. When we won the three trophies and the Grand Slam or the treble or whatever you want to call it, most Panthers fans ridiculed the fact that Belfast went out and bought their own trophy. Now that own trophy is ours, I don't see why it makes any difference. To be honest, it's nice to have, but it shouldn't really be a recognised trophy.
And I feel exactly the same. I mean, I think you can see from the fan base, from Twitter, from the forums that most Panthers fans are like, yeah, well, okay, it's nice, but it's really, really not that important. Freddie, your thoughts on winning the EIHL conference?
I agree pretty much with what Andy said. I mean, I'd compare it to basically winning your Challenge Cup group. I mean, that's the sort of thing I'd compare it with. If you win the league, it's practically irrelevant, but if you don't come first, I get it is important for the playoff for your seeding. So that is important, but to be honest, it's not really a massive deal. But yeah, I'd really compare it to the Challenge Cup group, except for they've practically stuck a trophy on it. So
yeah. Fair enough. So, of course, as well as Panthers winning the EIHL conference, Braehead as the Gardner Conference champions become second seeds for the playoffs. But also important for Braehead, they join Sheffield in next season's Champions Hockey League. Now, Freddie, you've been a massive advocate of the CHL since its inception and Panthers' inclusion in the initial tournament this season. How big a deal is it for the clan and for Sheffield as well to be part of this?
I think it's a massive deal, to be honest, and I'm like delighted really that both clubs are going to be. Well, I'd confirmed before that they were going to participate if they qualified, and now they're going to. I mean, especially for Braehead in a city like Glasgow, I think having a Champions League, it's going to be a massive thing, really, and especially for a club this is only its fifth season, so it's really testament to all the work that's gone on, and it's something that they can take out of this season as well. In terms of, I know people sometimes ask, what's the point really? We're gonna get trashed or whatever. If we don't participate in it, we sort of, isolate ourselves really from the rest of Europe. If you look at the comparable leagues like Norway, Denmark, France, I mean, they're all putting teams in. They all want to play in it, and we really should be no different. And, if you don't enter it, you really sort of get left behind, in my opinion. So I think it's a really good thing. And there is long-term thinking in it as well. As I'm speaking to you, actually, I've got the sheet in front of me, actually, from the old Champions League that actually only lasted a couple of years, but it unfortunately closed down at the time of the economic crisis.
Yeah.
But it was a Champions League. It lasted till 08-09. I mean, this is a separate point, but in this the old Champions League, just to give you an idea of the sort of prize money that teams could win, just for participating in a group stage, a team would get €300,000.
Wow.
50,000 for a group win. I mean, the current Champions League it's nowhere near that stage yet. But in Europe, it's a massive sport, and it can get to that stage. And you've got to be in it from the start. You can't just pick and choose when you're in it or you're not in it. You're in it, and Cubs may take a small financial hit, but I think the potential return is all worth it, really. So I think it's excellent, really, that we've got two spots now. I really do think it's a great thing, and it's added a new dimension to the league as well, really.
Andy, of course, Panthers were in the Champions League this season, and there seems to be a bit of a split amongst the fan base. Most have been positive, but there has been some negative comments regarding our participation in it. So, were you disappointed that we haven't managed to qualify for next season's competition?
From a personal standpoint, yes, but I think it's great that there's now 2 teams in the CHL. My own opinion of the Champions Hockey League mirrors Freddie's in the sense that it is only going to get better for our league and our sport. At the end of the day, we've long been sort of left behind by Europe with regards to what their perceptions of UK hockey is. And we're really starting to make a bit of a name for ourselves. We're still a long way to go, don't get me wrong. We're nowhere near the same level as to be able to compete regularly with these top leagues that are also in the CHL. But by the same token, if you don't test yourself, you're never going to get better, and you're just going to get stuck in the same situation. And it's pretty much a personal standpoint. But by the same token, I'd far rather see us play some fancy teams on a Tuesday night than watch us having to play the same team for the 10th time in the season. And obviously, as for fans, it's great because they get a little mini European adventure, which everybody loves. And yeah, like I say, I think it's great for the sport over here, and I think that the participation of the clubs and the fact that everybody seems to have bought into it. I mean, it was announced that the top 5 clubs in the league at the time that looked like there was a chance that they could all enter it, all pretty much said, yeah, if we make it, we're going. And I think that's great to see. Obviously, many people were, sceptical about the whole injury standpoint and the financial implications. But at the end of the day, some of the guys that we've seen over the years have come here to play in this league and, to play in the Champions Hockey League. Sometimes they don't work out and sometimes they do. And if it means that we get a higher quality of player coming over into this league, players like Nathan Robinson and to be fair, Colby Cohen and players like that, it's only good for the fans because we're getting a better quality of products.
Freddie, one of the questions that we have for Ask CWTV, but I'll actually ask you now because it relates to this. Do you think that regular involvement of elite league teams in the CHL will end any talk of Panthers competing in a foreign league?
I mean, it's always going to be speculation, I guess. But the CHL is, to be honest, is the perfect thing. It's the sort of thing we've been hoping really to happen for the past few years. I mean, when we went to the Continental Cup meeting a couple of years ago, I went with my dad. We were talking about it with some of the other similar sort of standard clubs like Rouen from France. Like, this is something like we all really wanted to happen. So, because it's perfect because we all the leagues in Europe, including the elite league, the domestic leagues are very strong. Yeah. It's like people enjoy seeing games against teams from the same country, and it's not only in the UK; it's in other countries like Switzerland. They all really enjoy seeing their own league, so no one really wants to leave their own league. So this is really the perfect sort of compromise, I'd say. You get to see, just from say next season, Braehead and Sheffield are going to get to see 2 games against teams they're probably never going to see again. And as Andy said, we see other teams the whole time, 10 times or whatever. So it makes a nice change.
Before we move on to some more of your Ask CWTV questions, we're going to have a look at Peter Russell's Great Britain squad. His final 23-man squad was announced this morning. From the Panthers, we have calls for Robert Farmer, Jonathan Boxall, who will be making his debut, and Robert Lakovic. Steve Lee sadly misses out because of injury, and Sam Oakford is on the reserve list. And also from the Clan, we have Matt Haywood, and also in the reserve, Ben Davis. Freddie, was you surprised that Ben didn't make it into the final cut?
Yeah, to a degree, really. Not only him, but Craig Peacock as well. I mean, it was a bit of a surprise, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that was the one that shocked me the most. Is to see Craig on the reserve list, because I think before we came on air, Andy, wasn't you saying that he is actually the top British scorer?
Yeah, absolutely. He's the top British goal scorer. from the season. And just looking at the squad, with obviously David Clark not being there, Peacock is probably the only real British sniper, real guaranteed goal scorer. There's plenty of players in the squad that will score goals. Don't get me wrong, but I just think with the past couple of seasons, couple of years worth of World Championships and stuff like that, Peacock's been one of the real standouts at these championships. And a proven goal scorer like him would always be in my team. So it was certainly a surprise to see him left out of the squad. I kind of agree, with Freddie as well, that I was a little surprised Ben Davies didn't make the cut. I thought he'd had a really good season. He's getting better and better every year. But like I say, apart from sort of Peacock situation, I probably would have gone with one less defenseman and added Peacock, and gone with effectively one spare defenseman, one spare forward, and one spare netminder. I remember starting lineup. But it's an exciting squad. It's young, it's fresh. Obviously, there's a few older heads in there. There's a couple of recalls, which is good to see from some of the guys there. Obviously a netminder like Stevie Lyle. He's still a decent netminder. He's still a very good netminder. So it's great to see him get the call. Obviously, they didn't want to take the risk with Murphy coming back from injury. They don't want to risk him. So overall, the squad itself is extremely exciting. You look at some of the fact that there's guys making debuts. I think did they say that there's 6 guys getting their debuts? I think. Yeah,
and of course you've got the I suppose the unknown quantity of Liam Stewart, of course the son of pop star Rod Stewart, Jack Prince, who was a former Nottingham junior but has been playing out in North America and is currently at the University of Alabama in Huntsville. So there's that unknown quantity that we've not really seen before. They've obviously Peter Russell knows them from the under-20 squad, but he's now brought them through to the seniors. And Freddie, that continuity is really, really important.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, Jack Prince, I think we might have spoken to him a few years ago, but he's sort of in the mould of David Clark. I think he's maybe the nearest replacement they could sort of get. He's a proper goal scorer. I mean, that's what he's like. Mm. And I'd also add as well that the other reserve, Andy was saying that Craig Peacock, is a goal scorer being left out. Joey Lewis as well plays. I know he plays in the 3rd tier of Germany, but he plays there as an import, to be fair. Mm. And he's on their first line. He's on their power play. So he's another goal scorer they've left out. I'd agree with what Andy said as well. I probably would have left out one defenseman and maybe taken one of Peacock, Lewis or Davis, really.
Defence, and I suppose there was quite a surprise today when Steve Lee has not recovered from injury, so won't be going to this tournament. But his replacement was announced as Mark Thomas, who wasn't even in the initial 31-man squad. Andy, was that a bit of a surprise?
Yeah, it is for me. He's a guy that, yes, has just won the league. But he was limited ice time, and I don't think he's been as effective sort of this past couple of years as he has done before. I was very surprised, really, that he's been called up, especially when you consider some of the younger guys that seems to be the way that they're going. Especially when you consider that some of the guys that they have left out. That they've gone with Mark Thomas. I think the fact that makes it more shocking almost is the fact that he wasn't in the initial squad. But at the end of the day, he brings experience. He's, whether you like him or not, he's a proven winner. He's won many a trophy. So fair enough. And if Pete thinks that he fits into the squad better than anybody else that was available or on offer, who are we to argue with? The guy's got a great record coaching the GB squad at the under-20s, and I hope it continues with the senior squad.
Freddie, what do you think is a realistic ambition for this tournament for GB?
I mean, obviously they're going to want to get promoted, but I don't think it'd actually be the worst thing if they stay in this division. They've got a couple of young guys, so maybe it could do them some good to just carry on building for a couple of years and then get promoted. I was looking at some of the other squads actually today. South Korea, I think, are in the group, and Croatia. And over the past few years, both South Korea and Croatia they seem to got a lot of good dual nats, really. I mean, South Korea was on the EIHL website today, just I think that's the word, neutralised. A player who's straight out the AHL, really. He's played for a couple of years in the Asian League. And they've got another 4 or 5 like that on their roster. And the Croatian team has got 4 or 5 players who play for Zagreb in the KHL. So it's going to be tough, really. It's definitely going to be, I think, a lot more tough than what people think.
Okay, so we will leave that there. And, of course, the tournament takes place in the Netherlands in early April. But, of course, there are a couple of warm-up games against Poland, the 9th of April at the NIC and 10th of April at the Coventry Sky Dome. So get along to those if you can. We are going to move on now to some more of the Ask CWTV questions that we got in from you. Thanks very much once again for sending them in. If you do want to contact us or send in a question, you can contact us on Twitter. It's at CatsWhiskersTV and use the hashtag AskCWTV. So the first question, and that comes from your Panthers Hockey Live colleague Andy, Antoine Marijon, and he asks, and it's really directed to you, Freddie, if it came down to it, which side of the fence do the Blacks sit on? Is it Panthers or Clan?
Does he mean in terms of being a fan, or...?
He means in terms of being a fan, but he also sort of adds, do you take more pleasure in building the Clan from new or by resurrecting the Panthers?
I mean, part of that's really the resurrections are all really my dad, so can't answer, but, we are Panther fans.
Yeah.
Like, we've always been Panther fans, really. But, to be honest, that doesn't really have any effect on the way either a club is run. I mean, even if my dad was just running Nottingham and he supported Belfast, it wouldn't make any difference, really, to how it's run. But yeah, like, Panthers is the club that my dad first supported. I've supported them all my life, really. So it's always, you can't really change that, can you?
No.
So, no matter what happens in the future, we're always going to be Panther fans, really. My house is full of pictures of the Panthers winning trophies. My keyring's got little Panthers things on it. So yeah, I guess that answers that.
Okay, but what about the Clan themselves? How involved are you? Because I noticed from a tweet that you was going with Gareth Chalmers to the Champions League draw on Thursday.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that, to be honest, my dad's the person who deals with the Champions League on behalf of the Elite League.
Yeah.
And he's away for the draw, so I'm really just going on his behalf. But yeah, I help out. Obviously, I've had a bit of experience, like with my dad trying to search up dates. I mean, for flights, the way it all works. Maybe help with some travel arrangements, because it all really happens at that draw. The draw's done, and then straight after you go and meet with the other 2 teams who you join in a group with, and you try and work out the fixtures. So I'll really be helping with that.
Okay. I mean, it must give you, I suppose, your dad and your brothers some great pleasure with what you've done with the Clan in such a short time.
Yeah, it's amazing, really. I mean, we were looking at the crowds the other day, and it's almost like if you were going to define how a business would be like perfectly run over 5 years. I mean, the trajectory is literally straight up every year. Crowds have increased just continuously. So yeah, it's been, and we really feel like we've just scratched the surface, really. Yeah. I mean, I tweeted it the other day. There's plans for a new 8,000 arena in the next 3 to 5 years. And to be honest, we don't see why we couldn't fill it, to be honest. I mean, that's the way it's going.
Because I mean, you've had some quite astounding crowds. I mean, sold out for, was it pretty much the last sort of 5 or 6 home games that you had? There's pretty much sold out.
I think it's been 9 or 10 sellouts this year. I mean, they averaged over 3,000 fans. And do you know what the most satisfying thing I think of it all? I mean, of course you want them to win. You want the Clan to win silverware, but they've done it without. They've got to a stage now where they're averaging over 3,000 fans, and they haven't won one piece of silverware. They haven't got to one final, and they've still managed to get to that level of support. which I think that's a good model for maybe future franchises. That you don't have to come in and win everything, and just be built on success. You can build from a solid foundation, and then really in the future the success will come, and I'm sure it will to the clan in the next few years.
Okay, next question. That comes from Tom Middleton, and he says, "I've got to ask, webcasts, any plans for next season?" And of course, Panthers, of course, did the webcast on Friday night, but that was the first one, and from what we was told at the time, that was a one-off. In Braehead, haven't done a webcast as yet. Do you think that's something that's likely to change?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I'm not sure. I see the pro and cons really of both sides. I think one point that people don't often really remember is, if, say it just theoretically, if the Elite League signed a deal with Sky, a lucrative deal, or Premier Sports, they signed a lucrative deal, a proper deal, that would mean that all webcasts would have to basically stop, regardless. So, and it's quite difficult once you give like the fans the opportunity to watch something to then just take it away, if you know what I mean. I mean, that, because, like, just say, for example, a different situation, but just to give you a real life situation, I can't go to see Spurs at White Hart Lane, and they're playing at 3 p.m. on a Saturday, and I can't afford to pay for the £120 ticket. I can't watch that game legally in the UK. No. We're talking about the Premier League here, but in terms of next season and for Braehead, honestly, I don't know, but I guess I'd hope so. If there's no TV deal, yeah. If there's no lucrative TV deal.
Andy, we talked about webcasts in length last week with the announcement that Panthers were doing one for the Sheffield game. We've both said we've both watched them, we've both enjoyed them. Do you think that it is something that perhaps Braehead and Panthers should offer?
I certainly think at the moment, yes. If you look at this season just gone, everybody else is doing it. And that doesn't necessarily mean that we should, but by the same token, as it stands at the moment, we don't have a lucrative television deal as such. We have a couple of live games on Premier Sports and a month, and at the moment that doesn't seem to have any signs of changing for next year. So I'd like to think that next year both us and Braehead would perhaps join in the webcast bandwagon, shall we say? Because I think it is. I think it would be lucrative. You might, I don't know the ins and outs of ticket sales and stuff like that, but I would like to think that certainly away fans would feel it would be more accessible for them to get a webcast than to travel down from wherever it is that they're coming from to come and watch a game. What we've got to understand as a league is the fact that realistically, apart from the Scottish teams and possibly us, Sheffield and Coventry, there are no real close games for away fans to go to on a Sunday night or on a Tuesday or midweek at 7:30 or whatever, and it's been a great addition for the fans to watch their team away from home to games that they would never even dream of going to. There was a time a few years ago where I've made every effort to go to every single game home and away. Priorities change now. I've grown up. I've got other things that depend on my money side of things, that I can't afford to do that. However, chipping in with a couple of mates and getting a webcast has been a fantastic addition. It means that I can still watch my team. It means I can still support them. It means that I'm still giving money towards the clubs that are providing the webcasts. And overall, I think it's a great idea. I appreciate what Freddie says regarding if we get a lucrative TV deal, but for the foreseeable future, I can't see that happening. So I'd like to think that next year, that Panthers and Bread would probably look at doing the webcast. I know, obviously, the Panthers one that we had for Friday was deemed a special one-off, but they created their own separate website for it. So it would seem, that there was at least some thought of going with it in the long run, perhaps.
Okay. Next question that comes from Clantastic, who regularly sends questions in to us, and he says, and Andy, I'm going to come to you first with this one. Time for Clan to compete alongside the big teams, or stuck propping up small teams?
Wow.
I'm guessing this is a conference-related question.
Yeah. I mean, I can kind of understand, to make a point on, touch on a point that Freddie made earlier regarding the fact that they're getting good crowds, but they still haven't actually won anything yet. And that's great. But by the same token, look at this season, for example. They've qualified for the Champions Hockey League, which is a fantastic achievement, and they've lost the league title by 1 point. I'd say that was competing with the big boys. They certainly competed with the big boys more than Panthers have this season. So I certainly don't think it'll be too long before we start seeing silverware in Glasgow. And you look at the team Finity built this year. It was built for entertainment, and that's why they got the crowds in. But also it was built to win hockey games, and they did an awful lot of that. And in 4 or 5 years' time, who's to say that they won't, be the start of the next big dynasty?
Freddie, same question.
I better quickly add in that the Clan have won a trophy. They've won the Gardner Trophy. So I should rephrase that, so they haven't won a major trophy yet.
Yeah.
On the question, I think I know where he's getting at. I think I've discussed it with him before on Twitter. And it's getting more at the situation of the whole conference, really, the whole structure. I mean, I'll admit I'm probably not the biggest fan of the current structure, but then again, it's, I can summarise it really pretty concise, is that before we had the conference system, my dad used to go to every EIHL board meeting, and they would all start exactly the same. I haven't got any money, I need more money, I'm going out of business. And really, for the past 3 years, hasn't even been a murmur of that. There hasn't been, and at the end of the day, that's got to come first, really, that teams can survive. So, I mean, if in the future, teams can survive without it, fine. I personally, I like to see it, slowly phased out. So it's not too big a financial hit for the smaller teams, but you can't just really think of yourself, in my opinion. You've got to think of the situation of everyone else, because at the end of the day, we could be doing unbelievable in Braehead, we could be doing unbelievable in Nottingham, we could be selling out every game. But at the end of the day, if we haven't got anyone to play, you've got to have someone to play, and you want them to be doing as well as possible. That's the sort of view I think you've got to take on it.
Freddie, you said that you didn't quite like the conference system at the moment, but it makes all the teams stable. But do you feel that Hull are quite disadvantaged, because within the conference, 300 miles round trip is their nearest game, and yet the closest two teams to them are the ones with the biggest fan bases, and they're deprived really a couple of big paydays?
Yes, to a degree. I mean, yes, they're disadvantaged of those potentially big crowds against Sheffield and Nottingham, but at the same time, they also, realistically have more winnable home games. So, yeah, I mean, you could argue yes or no, I think, to that. There's two sides to that argument.
Okay. Great stuff. Well, I think we will leave the questions there. Thanks very much to you all for sending them in once again. Please keep them coming in for next week's show at Whiskers TV on Twitter, and use the hashtag AskCWTV. With the regular season over, the playoffs are upon us, and the quarterfinals will be taking place this weekend. Fife against Steelers, Devils against the Giants, Clan against the Hull Stingrays, and of course the Panthers taking on the Blaze. We will look at Panthers Blaze a little later, where Stuart Coles from a Blaze fan will be joining us. But I think we'll start off, Freddie, with Clan against Hull. Tough tie.
It's going to be a tough couple of games, I think. I mean, if we all remember a couple of years ago, Hull actually made it. They beat Sheffield.
Yeah.
And they've actually got a pretty good team this year, to be honest. And, on their day, they are a good team. I think what's going to be key for Hull is how many bodies they can get back, because I think at the moment they're down to 11 or 12 players.
Yeah.
So that's going to play a big role in those couple of games. I mean, Clan will obviously want to win that. I mean, you've got to put them as favourites, really. I'm not sure what the record this year is in the Clan Hull series, but I'd guess the Clan have won the vast majority of them. I think it's going to be a good couple of games, to be honest. And I think Hull, they're capable of springing a surprise, I think.
Andy, Clan Hull, what's your views on that matchup?
As much as this is going to sound like a real strange get-out, it's going to go one of two ways. Either Braid will absolutely walk it, as perhaps most people would expect, or it's going to be really, really close. And I think the key will be bodies, like Freddie says. Whoever Hull can get back, I'm led to believe that, like you said, that they had 11 skaters for their shootout win against Coventry at the weekend. If they can get some players back, it will be a big boost, not only to the playing staff, but just morale as well. Having these new guys, these guys come back from injury will be a huge morale boost for them as well. With that being said, I think the big key will be to try and keep it as close as possible going into the second leg and really give themselves a chance. They don't want to be going into that second leg, 3, maybe 4 goals down. They need to keep it as close as possible, as tight as possible at the back in the first leg. And then who knows? It becomes a cup game at the end of the day. It becomes a straight one game knockout. So it will be tough. I think. I don't think it will be the walkover like perhaps a fair few people seem to think it would be. But by the same token, I do think Braid over 2 legs will be too strong for them.
Moving on to the next matchup, and that's the champions, the Sheffield Steelers, against the Five Flyers. I mean, I think we would probably expect Steelers to come through that one. However, they're not going to relish the trip up to Scotland on Saturday and then back on Sunday, Freddie.
It's going to be tough. I think it's going to be very tough. And you know what? Sometimes it isn't. I don't think it is the advantage to play the second game at home. And I think this might be an example, because you've got to travel the whole way up to Fife. And I'm sure that's going to be one hell of a game. And it's going to probably be one hell of an atmosphere. And then they've got to travel back overnight and then play, whereas Fife have just got to travel the once. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously you've got to fancy Steelers. They must be full of confidence after what just happened. Realistically, you see Sheffield should have enough to get through it, but I mean, I'm probably going to say the same for all the games. I could, an upset isn't impossible. I mean, Steelers should make it, but I think a lot's going to rely on the game on Saturday. I mean, a couple of years ago, if we just think back to Nottingham in the 12-13 season, we just won the league, we just won the Challenge Cup, and then we went up to Fife, and I think we got beaten 3-0. 3-0?
4-2.
4-2.
Wait, you were there, weren't you, Andy?
Yeah, I was.
I mean,
I forgot about that.
Yeah, that's a very similar situation, I think, to what could happen this year. They're capable of that, of doing the same sort of thing. Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Andy, same question, same game.
Everyone talks about Cardiff being a difficult place to go and get points, but Fife would probably be up there for me as regards difficult, tricky ties. And Sheffield are going to be in one. And I'll tell you something: when it comes to Monday morning, Sheffield will know they've been in a tie. Whether they win or lose, they will feel the effects of having to, like Freddie says, travel all the way up to Fife, play a grueling 60-minute game of hockey, which realistically I think Fife have a very good chance of winning. And then obviously they've got to travel all the way back down, get rested up, and then do the same again in Sheffield. Again, personally, I think Sheffield will have too much for Fife, but I actually see this one being, a little bit edgy for them. Perhaps I think I wouldn't be surprised to see, on Saturday night that Fife had won the first leg.
Okay, the next one, which promises to be a humdinger of a tie, I think, which is the Cardiff Devils against the Belfast Giants at the Odyssey Arena on Saturday, and then the Big Blue Tent live on Premier Sports on Sunday. So, Freddie, this one I think is too difficult to call.
I would agree with that. It's too difficult to call. I mean, Cardiff have obviously probably got to be slight favourites. Giants haven't had the best of seasons, but the thing is, they've got a team which has the potential. You only really need to win 4 games to win the playoffs. I mean, and in this series, over 2 games, when they get playing Giants, they're as good as anyone, really. It's going to be very interesting. I think Giants are going to need to take some sort of lead going into Cardiff on Sunday. I think if they don't get at least a 2-goal lead, I really can't see anyone but Cardiff making it to the Final Four.
Andy, what do you think?
I think Belfast will be a different beast. They're finally getting back into games that will actually mean something now. They've been on a pretty poor run really for the past month or so by their standards. But I think knowing that they weren't in the cup, the chances of winning the league were extremely slim. It must be hard to motivate guys to play when they're safe in the playoffs. They were never in threat of not making the playoffs, but they were also never really in threat of finishing 4th or 5th. Was pretty much it for them. So there will be a different beast because they will have something to play for now. But by the same token, I just think Cardiff will be too strong for them. I think again, not to harp on about it too much, but going to Cardiff and getting a result is incredibly difficult. And I think I actually think perhaps 3, maybe 4 goals of an advantage will be what Belfast will need. If they are to come out of that tie with the win, because I think as Panthers saw at the weekend, on form and on their day, Cardiff will score goals at Cardiff. I hate to say it for Belfast because obviously we've got some good friends there and they're a very good team, but I kind of fear that they might be on the wrong end of a bit of a humping on the Sunday.
One more game to look at, and that is, of course, Panthers against the Coventry Blaze. And I'm delighted to say that joining us is the editor of the On Fire Match Night magazine for the Coventry Blaze, Stuart Coles.
Evening, how you doing?
Very well, thanks. Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate you taking the time out to talk to us about the game.
Not a problem. Should be a good one.
Yeah, I mean, looking at Coventry's form over the last 5 games, it's not been too great, and I think you've got a lot of Panthers fans who are equally not that confident with playing the Blaze, because we've not had a great record at the Sky Dome this season. So, are you expecting quite a close matchup?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the past 5 games have been not great for the Blaze by any stretch. Shut out by Sheffield. They were technically shut out away in Hull. Shut out in Belfast over the last 5 games, so form is not great, particularly scoring-wise. Defensively, not too bad, but it doesn't, the last 5 games, you want to be hitting a run of form and you want to be streaking towards the playoffs, and that's not where the Blaze currently are. We haven't won in Nottingham all season, but then we've had a good record against Nottingham in the Sky Dome, so I think there's cause for optimism and pessimism on both sides.
Brian Stewart has been quite outstanding for you this season. I was looking at some stats before we started the recording, and a 92.1% save average. He's faced 2,229 shots this season, which is 160 more than Hydlowski from Edinburgh, who's faced the next most. It's key that he has 2 stellar games for you this weekend, isn't it?
Yeah, he is by far and away our best player. Honestly, I think he should have been in the top 3 for the best player in the league. I can understand why the 3 players who got voted have got it, but he's pretty much carried us on our back for the whole season, on his back for the whole season. bailed us out of numerous games, penalty shot wins, etc., etc. And yeah, without him, we don't have a chance to win, and we need him to be on top form, without a shadow of a doubt.
Of course, I mentioned that there hasn't been a great confidence in Nottingham about facing the Blaze, but what's been the reaction of the Blaze fan base? I mean, are they happy to be facing Nottingham, or is it a similar opinion throughout your fan base where you don't think we're going to do too well?
I think we're happy not to be playing Cardiff, because as bad as we are against you in Nottingham, we're even worse against Cardiff in both venues. Our record against them this year is not good at all. Everybody else, it's kind of, there's pluses and minuses. We don't play well in Sheffield. We've not played well in Nottingham, but we've got a pretty decent home record. So since Chuck Webber's arrived, we've beaten every team in the league. So that this new, Blaze 2015 version 2 is decent enough that could make it through. But then I think with the majority of teams, you can make a case that they can win their quarter-final.
Okay. Andy, from a Panthers point of view, how do you see this one going?
Well, I'd like to certainly think that we've got enough. But, as Stuart says, their best player of the year has been their netminder. And if he has, if he outperforms Matthias Modig at the other end, then we're going to be in trouble. So I think out of all the quarter-final games, if you can call them upsets, I certainly think from a Panthers perspective, this one has the biggest threat of there being an upset. Like I say, if you can call it an upset, because let's face it, Coventry haven't had a great season as such, but they're not a bad team. I'm not necessarily pessimistic. I like to think perhaps a bit more sort of cautious is the right word. I appreciate that, we probably should have the tools to beat Coventry, but by the same token, on their day, and we've seen it a few times at the Skydome already this year, they will beat us. So it's going to be close. I think it will be the closest out of all the fixtures. And I just hope that that we get a good enough lead going into the Skydome from our home leg, which obviously we will be the home leg first due to ice time. So I think that I would be comfortable saying a 2-goal lead should be enough, but by the same token, I would like to see us really try and run the score up on a Saturday just to give us that that leeway for the Sunday night game.
Freddie, we were talking earlier about the potential of upsets in the 5 Steelers games and the Clan Hall clashes. Would you regard a Coventry victory being that much of an upset?
I mean, to a degree, just in the sense that we're the number 2 seed and they're the number, was it 7? Oh, sorry, we're the number
3 and 6.
We're the number 3 and 6. I mean, in that regard, but to be honest, I think both teams have had, I mean, in a similar sort of situation as everyone said. I think it's going to be really close, to be honest, over the 2 legs. I think, like Andy said, I think we need a taking a 2-goal lead. I think I'd be comfortable with that. I mean, most of the games in the Skydome, I think that Coventry have won by one goal. I think in most of the games. The one thing I would say is, if it does go to a shootout, it's going to be very, very tough to win. I mean, we talk about them being lotteries, really, but I would really not fancy our chances against Brian Stewart in a penalty shootout. Just the way he plays and how big he is, I could not see him getting beaten in the shootout, to be honest.
Stu, Andy mentioned how he'd like to go into the Skydome with a few goals cushion. How key is that first leg for Coventry and keeping the score down? If you did get a defeat by the Panthers, what sort of defeat do you think you'd still be able to overcome?
I think 2 goals for us is about the limit. I think if we can ideally if we can either get a result or maybe keep it to a 1-goal defeat, that's probably the best case scenario. 2 goals is okay. We went to Braehead in the Challenge Cup quarter-final. We overturned a 2-goal deficit there. Our average goals per game is only just over 2. It's about 2.2. So if it's 3 or more, I think we might struggle to score that many goals. And what you kind of assume as well, because Nottingham, we don't tend to shut teams out at home, particularly Nottingham. It'd be, if Nottingham get 1, if we need 4 or 5 goals, we're not in a position where we've been scoring that many of late. So I think if it's 3 or more, then it's probably safe to assume that Nottingham will be able to ride out whatever Coventry can throw at them in the second leg.
Alright guys, I'm going to ask you to put your necks on the line now, and I want you to give me who you think will be the final 4 teams at Nottingham for the playoff final weekend. So Andy, I'll come to you first.
Sheffield, Braehead, Cardiff and Nottingham.
Freddie?
Sheffield, Nottingham, Braehead. I'm going to go for one controversial one. I'm going to go for Belfast.
Right, interesting. Stuart?
Sheffield, Braehead, Cardiff, Coventry.
And I will go for Sheffield. I'm going to go for a controversial one. I think if anything's going to be upset, I think it'd be Hull beating Braehead. I'm hoping Nottingham, and I think out of Belfast and Cardiff, I actually think Belfast as well. So be interesting to see if any of us are right. The games, Panthers, Coventry, 7pm face-off at the NIC on Saturday. There are tickets still available, and then Sunday a 5:15 face-off at the Sky Dome. Tickets still available for that one as well. Stuart, really appreciate your time in joining us this evening. Thank you very much.
Not a problem. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, you're absolutely welcome. Thank you. So thanks to Stuart Coles there for joining us, and also many thanks to Dave Sims for taking the time for an interview earlier in the show. Freddie, thanks very much for coming on. We really appreciate your time, and hope you've enjoyed it.
No worries. Thank you very much for having me. Good luck with the rest of the show.
Thank you very much. And Andy, thank you very much to you as well.
As always, it's a pleasure.
As always. We will be back next week. Aaron will hopefully be back with us, and we will be looking back at the playoff quarterfinals and looking ahead to what promises to be another great playoff finals weekend in Nottingham. So nearly the end of the season. We are almost there. Thanks very much for listening, as always, and we will speak to you again next week.